Well, I used to spend $50, sometimes $70 every spring trying to fill my home with greenery. Then, one afternoon, a fellow gardener at my retirement community showed me something that opened my eyes. She had a beautiful collection of thriving houseplants, and she told me she hadn't purchased a single one in years. Every plant came from cuttings and divisions she did herself. Today, I'm sharing every method she taught me, the same techniques that have saved me hundreds of dollars and turned my windowsills into a jungle of free, gorgeous houseplants. But first, let me tell you why this matters so much. How many of us have walked through a garden center with our eyes bigger than our wallets, watching those beautiful plants add up at checkout? You see a gorgeous pothos trailing down from its hanging basket, a snake plant standing tall and healthy, maybe a pretty peace lily just starting to bloom. You want them all. But then you glance at the price tags, do the math in your head, and suddenly you're putting plants back on the shelf. When you're living on a fixed income, every purchase requires thought. Plant prices have climbed higher in recent years, and what used to cost $8 or $10 now runs $15 or $20. You want a home filled with greenery, something that livens up your space and purifies the air. But wanting it and affording it are two different things. The hard part isn't just the money. It's standing there in that garden center, surrounded by all that green life, knowing you have to choose. You can get one or two plants, but not the collection you're dreaming about. You leave feeling like your passion for plants and your budget are at war with each other, and the budget always wins. I remember one afternoon standing in front of a display of devil's ivy, those beautiful cascading vines that add such life to a room. I wanted 3 of them for different spots in my apartment, but at $18 each, that was over $50 just for one type of plant. I walked away with nothing that day, frustrated and a little sad. Here's what I didn't know then, what most plant lovers never realize. The plants sitting on your windowsill right now are factory. They're producing new plants constantly, just waiting for you to take advantage of it. That single pothos you bought last year could have become 10 plants by now. That snake plant could have been divided into 5 or 6 healthy plants, enough to fill an entire corner of your living room. What if every houseplant you own could multiply? Not in some complicated laboratory way, but right there in your kitchen using a glass of water or a spare pot. 10 plants from 1, 20 plants from 3. A whole collection that cost you nothing but a little time and attention. The word propagation sounds technical, like something nursery professionals do in greenhouses with special equipment. That's the barrier that keeps most of us from trying. We assume we need rooting hormones, grow lights, temperature-controlled environments, or at minimum a degree in horticulture. The truth is far simpler. Research on plant propagation describes it as an easy and affordable way to increase your collection, and vegetative propagation specifically produces new plants quickly. All you need are sharp scissors, some containers, and plants that are already thriving in your home. No special tools, no complicated science. Once you understand a few basic principles about what cuttings need to root successfully, the process becomes straightforward. With 3 straightforward methods you can learn in a single afternoon, you'll never need to buy another houseplant. Those garden center trips become optional instead of necessary. Your plant collection grows without your budget shrinking. But here's what you need to know first. Many people who try propagation struggle at first, not because they lack skill, but because they make a few common mistakes that prevent their cuttings from taking root. I killed my first dozen cuttings before I figured out what I was doing wrong. They'd start out looking healthy, then slowly wilt and turn brown over the course of a week or 2. I thought I just didn't have the touch for propagation, that maybe some people could do it and others couldn't. Turns out, I was making the same 3 mistakes that almost everyone makes when they start. Propagation failure isn't about skill or having a green thumb. It comes down to 3 specific errors that are easy to make and just as easy to fix once you know what they are. Mistake number 1 is choosing the wrong plants to start with. When people get excited about propagation, they often try to multiply their most expensive or exotic plants first. African violets, fiddle-leaf figs, and orchids are among the worst choices for beginners. These plants are finicky under the best conditions, and they're even more demanding when you're trying to root cuttings from them. They need very specific humidity levels, particular temperatures, and conditions that are hard to maintain in a typical home. Starting with these difficult varieties sets you up for disappointment. You think you're bad at propagation when really you just picked plants that challenge even experienced gardeners. The second mistake catches people by surprise. Most of us assume cuttings need the same environment as our mature plants. We stick them on the same windowsill, give them the same light, keep them in the same temperature. But cuttings have completely different needs than established plants. They don't have roots yet, which means they can't draw up water the way a mature plant can. They need bright, indirect light, not direct sun, that can scorch their delicate new growth. The rooting medium needs to stay moist but not saturated. Humidity should be high to prevent their leaves from drying out, but not so high that diseases develop. And the rooting medium temperature should stay between 75 and 80 degrees for the best results. Those conditions are much more specific than what most houseplants need once they're established. Treating Treating cuttings like mature plants is one of the fastest ways to watch them fail. The third mistake is the hardest one to avoid because it goes against our nature. We get impatient. We take a cutting, place it in water or soil, and then we check it every single day. We lift it up to see if roots are forming. We change the water constantly. We move it to different spots looking for the perfect location. Every time we disturb those cuttings, we're interrupting the rooting process. Cuttings need time and stability. Many of them require 3 to 6 weeks of being left completely alone to establish roots. Though some plants respond quickly while others may take months. They're doing invisible work under the surface, and our constant checking actually slows them down or stops them entirely. Here's what makes these 3 mistakes so important to understand. When you avoid them, your success rate transforms. Instead of maybe 1 or 2 cuttings out of 10 surviving, you'll see 9 out of 10 thrive. That's the difference between thinking propagation is too hard and realizing it's actually one of the easiest gardening skills you can learn. One more thing before we get into the actual methods. Always start with healthy parent plants that are free of disease, insects, and stress. Use sharp, clean tools and make sure your containers and rooting medium are clean. These simple steps protect your cuttings and give them the best chance to thrive. Now let me show you the simplest propagation method, one that works for dozens of the most common houseplants you probably already own. Stem cutting propagation worked for pothos, philodendron, coleus, Swedish ivy, jade plants, nerve plants, wandering dude, also called Tradescantia zebrina, arrowhead plants, and dozens of other houseplants you see in stores every day. This method creates an exact genetic copy of your parent plant. You're essentially cloning your favorite houseplant, producing a new plant that will grow and look identical to the one you already love. The process starts with identifying a healthy stem on your plant, one that has at least 2 or 3 leaves attached. Look closely at where each leaf connects to the stem. That connection point is called a node, and it's where your new roots will emerge. Nodes are the key to successful propagation. Without them, your cutting won't develop roots. Once you've found your stem, use clean scissors or pruning shears to make your cut. Sterilize your tool first with rubbing alcohol to prevent introducing disease to your cutting. Make the cut just below a node at a slight angle. That angle gives the cutting more surface area for root development. Your cutting should be about 3 to 6 inches long, with at least 2 nodes included. Remove any leaves that would end up below the water line or soil surface, because submerged leaves will rot and contaminate your cutting. Now comes the question everyone asks: water or soil? Both methods work, but water propagation lets you watch the entire rooting process unfold. You can see those tiny white roots emerge and grow, which is not only satisfying but also helps you know exactly when your cutting is ready to be potted. For water propagation, find a clear glass or jar and fill it with room temperature water. Place your cutting in the water so the nodes are submerged, but the leaves stay above the surface. Set your glass in a spot that gets bright, indirect light. A windowsill that doesn't receive direct sun works perfectly. Direct sunlight can overheat the water and cook your cutting. Change the water once a week. Fresh water prevents bacteria buildup and provides oxygen to the developing root. During those first 2 weeks, you might not see much happening. Be patient. The cutting is working beneath the surface, developing the root tissue that will eventually emerge from those nodes. Around week 2 or 3, you'll start seeing tiny white root nubs appearing at the nodes. Those nubs will grow longer each day. Watch them develop from small bumps into actual roots with fine root hairs branching off. When those roots reach 2 to 3 inches in length, your cutting is ready to transition into soil. Plant it in a small pot with regular potting mix, water it thoroughly, and keep the soil consistently moist for the first week as it adjusts. If you want to speed up the rooting process, you can use rooting hormone powder. Just moisten the cut end of your stem, dip it into a small pile of the powder, and gently tap off any excess. Don't dip directly into the container. And remember that using too much will actually slow root development rather than help it. A light coating is all you need. Here's what makes this method so valuable. One mature pothos that costs $15 at a garden center can provide multiple cuttings that become full plants. That represents significant savings. You can fill your home, give plants as gifts, and dramatically reduce what you spend on that species. Stem cuttings open up a whole new world of plant abundance, but some plants don't even require this much effort or waiting time. Some plants are already growing multiple plants in one pot, just waiting for you to separate them and turn one into many. Division is the fastest propagation method there is. No waiting weeks for roots to develop. No checking water levels daily. You get immediate new plants that are ready to grow from the moment you pot them up. Snake plants, spider plants, Peace lilies, ferns, and most clumping houseplants are perfect candidates for division. These plants naturally produce multiple crowns or shoots from their base. Over time, they form dense clusters that are essentially several plants growing together in one container. They're already doing the hard work for you. How do you know when a plant is ready to divide? Look for multiple crowns emerging from the soil surface. Those are separate growth points, each one capable of becoming its own plant. Check if roots are circling around the inside of the pot, forming a dense mat. That's called being root-bound, and it means your plant has outgrown its space. You might also see obvious separate clusters of growth, distinct sections that look like they could stand alone. Any of these signs tells you the plant is ready. The best time to divide is early spring before the growing season begins, though you can divide whenever a plant has clearly outgrown its container. The process itself is gentle and straightforward. Start by removing the plant from its pot. Turn it on its side, tap the bottom and sides, and slide the whole root ball out. You'll see a tangled mass of roots holding soil and multiple stems together. Use your fingers to carefully tease apart the root ball. Work slowly, following the natural separation points between crowns or clusters. The plant will show you where it wants to divide. Many people worry that dividing will hurt the plant. Won't cutting through roots damage it? Here's the truth. Division actually rejuvenates overgrown plants and makes them healthier. When a plant becomes too crowded in its pot, it's competing with itself for space, water, and nutrients. Separating those crowns relieves that stress. Each new section gets more room and resources. Growth becomes more vigorous. The plants thrive better apart than they did crowded together. If the roots are too tightly bound to separate by hand, use a clean knife or trowel to cut through the larger roots. Make sure each division has adequate roots attached, and at least a few leaves or stems to support growth. You're not trying to get the perfect separation. You're just ensuring each section has what it needs to survive on its own. Once you've separated your divisions, pot each one in fresh potting soil. Choose containers that fit the root systems without being too large. Water thoroughly until water drains from the bottom. Give your newly divided plants a few days to recover in a spot with bright, indirect light. Keep the soil consistently moist but not soggy during that first week. One overgrown snake plant can become 5 or 6 individual plants in less than 10 minutes. Each one is a full plant, ready to grow and eventually fill its own pot. You can keep them for yourself, filling different rooms with greenery. Or you can give them away as gifts that cost you nothing but a few minutes of gentle work. But division isn't the only way plants multiply themselves for you. Some plants take generosity even further. Some plants are so generous, they grow baby plants right on their leaves or stems, complete and ready to become new plants with almost no effort from you. These plantlets and offsets represent nature's own propagation system. The parrot plant does most of the work, producing miniature versions of itself that are already part way to being independent. Spider plants are the champions of this method. They send out long stems that dangle perfect baby plants, often called plantlets, from their tips. Look closely at those babies and you'll see they're already forming aerial roots while still attached to the mother plant. They're essentially miniature spider plants, complete with their own leaves and the beginnings of a root system, just waiting to be separated and potted. The process couldn't be simpler. Snip off a plantlet from its stem using clean scissors. You can place it directly in water and watch roots develop within days, or you can skip the water step entirely and plant it straight into moist potting soil. Because these plantlets already have the start of a root system, they establish themselves remarkably fast. Within a week or two, they're growing as independent plants. Aloe vera produces a similar gift in the form of pups that cluster around the base of the mother plant. These small aloe plants grow from the parent's root system, developing their own roots while still connected. Wait until the pups reach a few inches tall before separating them. Then gently remove the mother plant from its pot. Separate the pups with their roots intact and pot them individually. Each pup becomes a full aloe plant. Hen and chick succulents spread even more enthusiastically across their containers. The mother plant, the hen, produces smaller rosettes called chicks that form a ring around her. These chicks can be gently twisted off once they develop their own root systems, then planted in new pots where they'll grow into full-sized hens that produce their own chicks. Watching these baby plants grow into full plants happens faster than any other propagation method. They're not starting from scratch like stem cutting. They arrive already equipped with leaves, stems, and often the beginnings of roots. They just need soil and water to take off growing at full speed. Here's what makes plantlets and offsets particularly special for sharing. When you give someone a cutting in water, they're receiving something that looks fragile and unfinished. But a plantlet already looks like a real plant. It has substance and presence. The recipient can pot it up immediately and watch it grow, rather than waiting weeks for roots to develop. A single spider plant can produce a dozen or more plantlets in one growing season. That's enough baby plants for every neighbor in your building, every member of your family, every friend you want to remember on their birthday. The abundance these plants provide is remarkable. When you give away a plant you've propagated yourself, you're offering something more meaningful than store-bought greenery. You're sharing a piece of your own garden, a plant you've cared for and nurtured. That baby spider plant dangling from your mother plant carries your attention and effort with it. The aloe pup you separate and pot up represents time you've spent tending the parent. These living gifts create connections that go deeper than the plants themselves. The woman who taught me propagation told me something I'll never forget. Every plant she gave away carried a piece of her story with it. When she handed someone a rooted cutting or a potted division, she was sharing more than greenery. She was offering a living connection to her own garden, her own hands, her own care. Propagation isn't just about free plants or saving money. It's about connection and generosity, about having something abundant to share when so much in our lives feels limited by budgets and circumstances. In retirement communities, propagated plants become conversation starters in the most natural way. Someone notices the spider plant babies you're rooting in jars on your windowsill and asks about them. You explain what you're doing, and suddenly you're sharing techniques, comparing notes on which plants root fastest, making plans to swap cutting. Those small interactions add up to friendships. The plants become tokens of those relationships, living reminders that someone thought of you and wanted to share something they created. The ripple effect can be remarkable. One person learns to propagate and teaches a neighbor. That neighbor teaches someone down the hall. Before long, you have a network of people sharing cuttings, swapping plant babies, and helping each other keep collections growing. The knowledge spreads as naturally as the plants themselves multiply. You build a community of green-thumbed friends who understand the satisfaction of creating abundance from small beginning. The practical benefits for gifting make this skill even more valuable. Propagated plants in simple terracotta pots or mason jars cost almost nothing to create, yet they feel incredibly personal and thoughtful, exactly the kind of meaningful gifts that show real care and attention. You're not handing someone something mass-produced from a store shelf. You're giving them something you nurtured from the beginning, something that took your time and attention. These thoughtful, personalized gifts respect your budget while honoring the people you care about. With a little planning, you can have dozens of rooted cuttings ready whenever you need them. Start some pothos cuttings in water 6 weeks before your granddaughter's birthday. Divide that overgrown peace lily 2 months before the holidays so each division has time to establish itself. Pot up spider plant babies throughout the summer for autumn gift giving. The timing works in your favor because plants grow while you're doing other things. In a world where everything costs more and more, being able to create beautiful gifts from your own windowsill feels quietly revolutionary. You're not dependent on stores or sales or shipping costs. You have the power to generate value right there in your home using nothing but water, soil, and patience. The routine of checking cuttings, potting up new plants, and preparing them for sharing creates purposeful, gentle activity. It gives you something to tend, something to look forward to, small tasks that fill your days with meaning. There's wellness in that gentle rhythm of care and growth. The real treasure isn't the money saved or even the plants themselves. It's the sense of abundance and contribution that comes from having something valuable to share. You move from scarcity to generosity, from receiving to giving. That shift changes how you see yourself and your place in your community. It changes your entire relationship with this hobby. You're no longer dependent on garden centers or sales or what's in stock. You have the power to expand your collection using what you already own, transforming yourself from a plant buyer into a plant grower, from a consumer into a creator. Choose one plant in your home right now and try your first cutting or division this week. Share your results in the comments so we can celebrate together and learn from each other's experiences. When you post about your propagation successes, you're not just sharing a personal achievement. You're contributing to a community of gardeners who support each other, swap techniques, and prove that beautiful houseplants don't have to cost a fortune. Hit that subscribe button because together we're building something special here, a place where growing and sharing go hand in hand.